that's why I know you guys have all anxiously waited your wonderful 3-ring binder. I know you're going to go home and read it page to page, cover to cover, and I want emails from all of you on all your questions. But if there's 1 or 2 of you that don't want to read it cover to cover, we're going to go just real broad overview today, and then you guys can have an opportunity to look at all the detail and then ask any questions whenever you have an opportunity. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay, these are just the things that we're going to talk about on the overview. Kind of the same things that we've done in the past. Some of them aren't as meaningful now that we're into the block grant system, but I still think it's important to talk about them. The increase in the general fund, sort of. If you look at the general fund budget for 2015-16, you will see that it's going to be about just shy of $64 million. Last year, our general fund budget was $49 million. Woohoo! We got lots of money. What they're doing under the block grant system is basically everything is going to have to go through the general fund. So if its intended purpose is not necessarily to stop at the general fund, it still has to make a stop at the general fund, be deposited as revenue, and then it can move on to its ultimate ending place, whether that be the supplemental general fund, capital outlay, or the capers fund. But then everything's kind of funneled through the general fund. So that's why we have, for the most part, a big increase. These are the pieces that are flowing through. The LOB state aid, that's going to be the state aid, same as we got last year. There's no change in that amount. But last year it didn't go through the general fund. This year it will go through the general fund, and then it will move on to the LOB. Capital outlay state aid, same thing. It went straight to capital outlay last year. This year it's going to stop at the general fund, and then capers funding. We see it for less than a day, but it will stop at the general fund. There is one item that will impact the general fund, and that's a reduction in special education state aid. And that has to do with the separation of USD-457 and RCDC. We lose the special ed waiting for, or the special ed reimbursement for their teachers and their parents. That's going to amount to about $660,000 for us next year. So that makes up the difference of the 15. Increase in the supplemental general fund and the LOB fund. For 15-16, we are proposing a $16 million LOB. Last year it was at 15.9, so it's an increase of $100,000. When we had talked previously, we thought that we would probably have to go and get pretty darn close to maxing out the LOB at 30%. I think that we can get by with just increasing it $100,000. Last year we were at about 28.7% of our general fund budget, and this year we're going to be at 28.8%. That does leave us with about $670,000 that we could probably go capture in future years if we needed to. So we've still got a little bit of breathing room for whatever comes our way next year.
A question real quick. Can you go back? I'm sorry. Can we ask you a question?
No. Yeah, of course you can, but I don't know how to go back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We'll get there. This one?
Yeah, because I thought we voted to do, I thought we were at 30% already.
You passed a resolution or adopted a resolution, I'm not sure which, made a motion that gave you the option to go up to 30% if we needed it. If we did not do that action by July 1st, I believe, then we would not have the option to go to 30%. So it just granted you the authority to go to 30% if we needed it, and I don't think that we're going to need it this year based on the information I have at this time.
That's what I remember was July 1st and the 30th. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, and we've been through some of these, so I'll give a quick summarization of how this year's budget looks different from last year's budget. When we did the budget last year, we did not know that the state was going to reduce our LOB state aid. So there was the $480,000 that they reduced us mid-year last year. They also reduced our capital outlay state aid, so those flow through to this year as well. There's that reduction in special education state aid that relates to RCDC. And then the loss of the RCDC reimbursement. As you know, we run all of the RCDC expenses through our budget. A portion of it is paid by the state. Whatever is not paid by the state, RCDC pays us directly. So we are not out anything overall, but we get two pieces of funding to make up the expenses that make up our CDC. So we won't have their money coming in either, but we also won't have their expenses, which I think is a little further down.
Will they still get that money, RCDC from the state?
They will through their new co-op. They'll have the same arrangement as they did underneath us. I kind of combined all the compensation for the weighted enrollment increase for our certified staff. We are going to maintain the salary schedule this year. There was not an increase on the base other than the weighted enrollment increase. And then for all of our classified staff, we proposed doing the longevity increases and just maintaining their salary schedule with no increase on the base. The health insurance increase, we are not doing any additional contribution to the health insurance. It's still staying at the same amount that it has been all of this year. The difference comes in that in last fiscal year, we would have only had a portion of it. We had 2014 calendar year, we would have only, or excuse me, 2015 calendar year, we would pick up the increase going from 650 to 710 for a full-time employee. We only had half a year of that increase. Now that we're at the remainder of 2015, we'll have the rest of that. So that picks up the difference there. Increase in transportation expenses. This has two pieces to it. One is some additional drivers that we hired. As you remember, at the beginning of the year, we had some issues, and we've kind of gotten that straightened out a little bit, but we did have to hire some more drivers. The other thing that comes into play is the Affordable Care Act, and under that, anyone that works for us 30 hours or more is entitled to health care benefits. In the past, not all of our drivers were getting those benefits, but under the Affordable Care Act, they now will be. So we had some increased costs there. And then there's the removal of the RCDC expenditures. In our budget last year, we had about $2.8 million in expenditures related to RCDC. So those will be taken off the books going forward for the budget. So the net of all those is we needed to find about $1.6 million in additional revenue or cost reductions to balance all the pieces to the puzzle. And we found them. These are similar to what we've looked at before. Maybe. The administrative reorganization that we did will amount to about $450,000. This is where we reduced the number of staff members at the ESC building and also in our middle school, high school. Did we do elementaries too? We implemented the remaining program budgeting cuts. As you remember, when we did program budgeting last year, not all departments had to go down to 98%. The remainder of those that did not go, which are technology, high school, middle school, elementary, and nursing staff, I believe. We went ahead and implemented those remaining cost reductions, and that amounted to about $570,000. And then we went to increase the LOB. Now, when we looked at this previously, that number was $1.2 million. Was what we thought we were going to have to increase the LOB, and we thought we were going to have to go close to that 30% mark. When I put all the pieces to the puzzle together, and I unwound RCDC, I don't know if you caught it, but we had about $600,000 of special education money, 1.6 in revenue coming in from them, and 2.8 in expenses. Those don't offset. And the reason they don't offset is because we were very conservative when we budgeted that the money coming in from them would not be dollar for dollar when we expended it. We wanted to make sure that we had enough room in our budget that if they didn't reimburse us in a timely fashion, that we had some room to move. That difference amounts to about $600,000. That difference, when we unwind that, gives us one-time money of about $600,000. So we will use that to offset the increase in the LOB, and that's why we only had to go up the additional 28.8 instead of the 30%. Enrollment summary. This one is probably one that's not as important now since we're not under the weighting system anymore, but I find it kind of interesting when you look at this slide. If you look over the last 6 years, I believe, starting in about 2009 and coming forward, we've increased almost 400 students in 6 years. If we continue to grow at that rate, we will have more students to educate, and we will not receive any additional funding for that, for those students. The assessed valuation, of course, plays a big factor in our mill levy. Last year, we had really good news. We had about a 7% increase last year in the assessed valuation. This year, it goes the opposite direction. We had a decrease of about 6%. I think it was about $22 million, if I remember right. All things being equal, if we did not raise the mill levy, we did nothing to the mill levy, it didn't change, didn't go up, didn't go down, just by the change in the assessed valuation, we would lose $325,000. This compares the mill levies for the past few years, and on the far side over there is the proposed mill levy for 2015-16. Note first, our bond and interest went down. That was good. That had to do with the refinancing that we did just a few months ago. I don't know if you remember, but we did about $9.3 million in refinancing, and what we did was when we structured that, the savings is pretty much bottlenecked over the next 5 years. So that helped lower the mill levy a little bit in bond and interest.
Will that help us over the next 5 years also, or will it be the better for us, or could it go worse?
Well, it may go worse as we continue. Our principal and interest payments will grow every year. But as far as the interest payments, we won't see the big bulk of those on that refinance piece for another 4 to 5 years. So depending on how the other bonds are structured, I don't expect to see this go down too much further, but it was nice to see it go down a little bit at least for the next year. So the increase for 2015-16 is 3.92 mils. Just to note as well, last year when we were at this meeting, we decreased it, I think it's 2.4, I think it was. If you combine the two, I think it's a 1.4 or 1.5 that we're actually going up over the 2 years. So last year, when we thought the state was going to be doing more to help with funding, we were able to adjust the mill levy and reduce the burden on the taxpayers. Now that the state is not giving us as much funding, unfortunately the burden is being shifted back to the taxpayers.
One meal equals about $300,000, is that right?
That's correct. And the difference in that as well is last year when we had state equalization, basically for every dollar we generated at the local level, the state matched it. It wasn't always dollar for dollar, but pretty darn close. Any additional money that we generate now will have no match on it. So everything has to come from local taxpayers.
And that is the result of the block grant law.
That is correct.
This spring.
When they passed the block grant law, basically they froze any equalization. Whatever we had in the equalization state aid last year is what we will get for the next 2 years, period, end of story. This slide was kind of depressing when I did it because everything that was positive last time moved to negative, and everything that was negative moved up. The only thing that didn't change was the increase in bond and interest state aid. That went from, for 2015-16, it's going to change to 46%. It was at 45%. That's the only one that actually did not change. The rest of these have all flipped. The other positive that we have that's impacting our mill levy calculation is the decrease in bond and principal interest payments, primarily due to the refinancing that we did. The negative impact factors, the decrease in assessed valuation of $20-some million, the decrease and freeze in the LOB state aid, and same with the decrease in the capital outlay state aid. Mill levy comparison, if you sit long enough, you'll find errors. Apparently I don't know the difference between 51 and 52, so just flip that in your head. What this shows you, these are the mill levy rates, the total mill levies for neighboring and or peer districts for last year. This is their 14-15 mill levy rate, and I'm comparing it to our 15-16. So theirs may change up or down. But even with our increase, we'd still be on the bottom 4 of this chart. The budget timeline. In a perfect world, we'll come back here August 10th, and you'll have a wonderful list of questions. We'll go over them, and we will discuss them, and I will ask for your approval for publication. And then at the meeting following that on the 24th, we'll have a public hearing, and I would ask for you to take action on the budget. But of course, we don't live in a perfect world. So this may not be the timeline, and the reason it may not be the timeline is because there may be an opportunity for us to go back to the State Finance Council and request some extraordinary funds, just as we did a few months ago. We feel that we may need some of those qualifications that would allow us to go back and ask for some additional funding. If we do go back and ask for additional funding, we are not able to publish our budget, because if we receive money, it will go into our LOB and it would change the mill levy rates. So we need to know if we're getting money or not before we can set the mill levies. So I'm looking into some possibilities there and what that'll do to our timeline. It would mean that we would probably file the budget late, but I guarantee we're not going to be the only district that does that if we decide that that's the route we want to take.
So we're not shortening the time frame, we're lengthening.
Possibly, yes. Just to give us an opportunity to find out if we can. The timeline for that would be if we decide that we are going to submit, I have to do that by the end of the week. And then I believe usually, well, at least last time, we had a hearing by mid-month, so mid-August, when we probably have the hearing, and I think we found out that day whether or not we received any funding. So from that point, we would need to publicize the budget. Once it's finalized, it has to be publicized for 10 days before we can actually take action on it.
And I think it's important for the board to know that that process is very dynamic right now. It's being defined by the state day by day. So this isn't information that we had 2 weeks ago or even a week ago. This is stuff that's coming out that if you're going to go to the State Finance Council and request, and districts are being encouraged to do that, that it's going to impact your normal timeline of the budget. So along with that, I think normally you get your budget forms for the next year, late June, 1st of July. This year they came out middle of June. KJ really couldn't even start this process till.
I don't think we got it until July 11th or 12th.
And KSD's doing all they can do, but with the uncertainty with the new block grant law, with the Supreme Court being in, or the district court being involved, and not knowing for sure how that was going to turn out, they weren't able to finalize their stuff. So everybody's doing their best here on this, but it is causing us to kind of deviate from our normal timelines, and it may cause a fairly significant change here if we elect to go that route, and depending on the information that comes out, but we'll keep you informed.
Any questions?
I got a couple. Okay, a couple months ago, Steve and you went to Topeka to request extra funds. How do those extra funds hurt us, or, I know how they help us, but do they impact our LOB, or?
They go, in this particular case, they would go into the LOB, which would then, any funds that we received in the LOB would be able to reduce the mill levy if we chose to do so. You could choose to leave it in the LOB and have it assist with next year's balances or next year's mill levy, or you could choose to reduce the current year.
And the money that we had to pay back to the county just last month because of that error, how does that impact us?
We have another payment that will be due next year, and I believe it's about $150,000–160,000 next year, and I have accounted for that in this year's budget. We're hoping that may qualify for some of the extraordinary needs funding, which would help offset that. But if we're not able to get any, I've accounted for paying that full amount back in that budget.
Thank
want to see,
The one that shows the LOB amount being 600,000, where we talked about how because of the RCDC one-time money,
oh, the one that has all the,
Where you come up with the 1.6 million. That's what's like.
this one?
yeah, go one more, I think. Don't you have one that shows?
It started with
The
your
administrative
administration
reorganization.
reorganization.
Oh,
Right.
450.
Maple.
Here.
Perfect. Okay, I think when we talked with you earlier in the spring, you saw something similar, but we anticipated that we'd have to raise the LOB about 1.2 million to balance our budget. It's important for the board to understand that because of that one-time money, that's given us a temporary reprieve here in balancing the budget. And that puts us in a position where we don't need to do that now, but assuming everything else would stay equal, in order to balance our budget next year, we would have to increase the LOB at that point to continue to be in balance.
Correct. And the primary driver, if we did nothing else, is to maintain the salary schedule is $500,000 to $600,000. So even if we just call it 500,000, we're going to need most of the room we have left on the LOB.
But my concern is with implementing the remaining program budgeting cuts. I remember going to that meeting and may have even been Mr. Hogan saying, we can only do this 1 year. If we do, because they were cutting textbooks or buying textbooks or something like that instead of cutting teachers. And next year, we're going to have to look at cutting teachers. So not everything on there is going to stay the same because those program budgeting cuts cannot necessarily be maintained.
Well, but we did implement the cut in personnel, not the textbook change. When we made the cuts this year, we did, that was past history with it. So we implemented, so we shouldn't run into that problem. But it's good news that we don't have to raise the LOB as much as we thought we were going to, but I just want the board to know we're filling that in with one-time money. So that's gonna work for us for 1 year. But next year will be without anything different from the state. The point is, we're not any closer to a long-term solution. And while the news is better than what we thought it was gonna have to be, it's still, we have some serious budget challenges in terms of schools in our state. And the block grants are not good for Garden City in terms of Garden City schools in terms of our budget. And for a number of reasons that KJ's pointed out.
So then if we're implementing the personnel cuts, and I know most of this is by attrition, how many positions have we lost?
We've lost 8.4 teaching positions as a result of this, and we've reduced 5.5 administrative positions.
How many bus drivers have we taken? We've hired more, but did we have to cut?
We did not cut in bus drivers. I think we're actually thinking we can get by with 2 fewer drivers for next year. That's factored into the budget, but that's an operational thing. That wasn't done as a budget cut. That was in looking at operating as efficiently as we could.
In nursing?
That's 0.4 of the teaching positions.
Are we gonna be able to sustain this district with 8.4 fewer teachers? Every year almost? I mean, it seems like every time we come for a budget meetings, we're cutting, still can't figure out the 0.4, but we're cutting more and more. And it's very frustrating. I'm really worried about our kids.
Yeah, and we are, for a long time, we were able to make cuts that weren't as visible as maybe you were seeing in other districts. We were, every address that is either to cut services, or to cut services and offset the changes that we have to make. So, Laura, I agree, it's very, very difficult times. And when we continue to get that news out of Topeka, it's hard to be maintaining the quality of service that we offer to our patrons and our kids and our families.
Well, and I'm hoping I'm not stepping out of line with some other rules, but negotiations discuss 30 furlough days in case of absolute catastrophe, essentially. So the fact that we're even having to look at that is very concerning.
Absolutely.
I just have a concern. Education is really a dynamic endeavor with our students. We need to be constantly looking at new ways to teach things, new things to teach. And with having such uncertainty in the budget, it really puts us in a stagnant situation where we're not able to take advantage of new technology or new ideas, new ways to educate students. We're really confined to it, not even the status quo, because we're losing ground every day, really, because of the rising expenses and the uncertainty of the money that has been, I guess, allotted for us, but it's a very difficult position to be in. This is not the best situation under the current plan. We need to really push and advocate for a return to some sort of definition in our budget, so that we know what's coming in and we can plan and it'll accommodate the future needs of our schools.
Any other questions, Connor? Education. Mr. Hogan, do you have some good news for him?
That's pressure.
You can only go up from here.
I wanted to go in front of KJ, but she wouldn't allow it.